In a world where you don't just die once, a frightened boy was seen hiding inside a closet, witnessing a monster in human skin taking out his parents right before his eyes. In front of him lay the lifeless body of his father, and right next to it the culprit who not only took out his mother but also murdered her very soul, leaving no chance of resurrection. We suddenly get a time jump, and that very same kid by the name of Kasai Miura was seen sitting in front of a psychiatrist, still trying to recover from his childhood trauma. But despite his visiting this place for months, nothing really changed. But the woman before him thought otherwise, as she was genuinely happy with his progress, especially considering he used to mumble about seeing spirits during the time his parents were deleted. Seeing her making that face was really starting to piss the kid off, since he blew a fortune on these sessions and got absolutely nothing in return. And deciding to get this over with quickly, he got up and prepared to head out. But the greedy one behind him was looking forward to their next sessions. Yeah, the kid politely told the girl they might have to reschedule since his university was starting up. Afterwards, he slammed the door and stormed out. Well, maybe she isn't only after his money, because she seemed genuinely glad that the boy was slowly recovering. Cut to the outside, and Kasai was seen walking out of the building while cursing under his breath about how that woman was taking him for a fool for believing her nonsense was working. After a bit, he was seen standing in a quiet alleyway, waiting for someone, and eventually that someone arrived, and no, this wasn't a planned meeting. These people had been tailing the kid, and he knew from the start, so he came to this place to ask what their problem was. Apparently, these goons are old acquaintances of our hero, who were just worried since he had been visiting that glasses lady, so they decided to keep an eye on him. Kasai just asked the man to drop his bull and get to the point. Well, it turns out our hero used to be part of a special kind of club, and their leader wasn't exactly thrilled when he heard the news of one of his best leaving the business without even saying goodbye. And according to the guy, he should be grateful he was asking nicely instead of chopping him into pieces. He reminded the kid about the time their boss first found him as a stupid brat who used to babble nonsense about souls and shit, and asked if he was really going to turn his back on them even after everything they'd done for him. But then again, he wasn't as desperate as their boss, since the kid had been a real nutcase in his eyes from the start. Still, he needed to follow orders and suggested he drop whatever sentimental shit he's going through and return. Otherwise, he warned the kid there would be consequences. Yeah, no, the kid just flicked away the smoke, and after hearing what the guy had to say, he turned around and started walking away while daring the man to try and stop him. That really rubbed the fool the wrong way, so he warned the kid to watch himself, because he was coming for him now and promised when the time comes he was going to enjoy himself. Unbeknownst to them, their whole conversation was being watched from the side by another individual, and judging by that haircut and weird way of standing, the guy looks like trouble. Story fast forwards, and our hero was seen walking out of his place, getting ready to start his first day of college, and just as he was about to leave, he heard a sweet voice from the side calling his name. Turning around, he found a sweet old grandma who heard today was his first day of college, so she made him lunch to celebrate. As for her identity, she is Kasai's neighbor, Miss Chow. As for our hero, he tried refusing, but then he took a look inside of that bag and found a whole bunch of dumplings just lying there waiting to be devoured. So obviously he immediately changed his mind, and with drool running down his face, he thanked the woman for always making delicious foods for him. Well, the woman was just happy he enjoys her cooking, and the reason she chose to make these was because her dumplings were her son's favorite dish. Our hero was happy hearing that, and since she went out of her way to make them, he promised to bring her something from a nearby bakery on his way back. But the woman tried to refuse. That's when she heard her husband's voice from the back, who was shouting at the kid to make sure it's a chocolate fudge cake with walnuts. Yeah, she was not exactly happy hearing how he jumped in like that, plus he was talking about eating a cake with his weak teeth, so she reminded the fool he might lose his dentures because of those walnuts. Yeah, that look on her face clearly meant he shouldn't be worried about those walnuts, but her fists, but then again, she never said he can't have the cake, so he asked the kid to bring a chocolate fudge cake instead. All this drama lifted our boy's mood, so he thanked both of them for always taking care of him. As for the two, they were just glad the kid was smiling since he's mostly so gloomy and keeping a distance from other people. Then again, considering how difficult a life he had lived, it made sense. Apparently at the age of 8, he lost both his parents. The authorities recorded their deaths as an accident caused by a gas leak, and the kid ended up experiencing a traumatic hallucination he was later diagnosed with because of shock. Because of that, he kept trying weird things to convince people it wasn't a gas leakage that took out both his parents, but no one believed a word he said. Then again, why would they? For all they knew, it was simply a case of a traumatized child finding his parents dead in a house fire. And now, after 10 whole years of constantly failing to find answers, and the man he saw that day who took out his parents, Kasai thought he had finally moved on. But apparently that wasn't the case, since his thoughts kept going back to that day. Back in the present, he was forcing himself to snap out of it and stop thinking about the stuff that happened in the past. And for the sake of a better and stable future, he told both his parents he loves them, but he can't keep living his life this way and needs to move on and leave that shitty past behind. Cut a couple of hours and the fool was completely exhausted, because apparently the life of a college student is somehow more difficult than that of a gangster running 24/7 from rivals and cops. Just then, in the middle of that, he heard strange noises coming from the apartment next door. So he got up, wondering what was going on, since normally his neighbors are pretty quiet and don't make that kind of noise. And being the nosy neighbor he was, he pressed his ear against the wall to try and listen to what was happening. And just as he was trying to focus and make out the voices, he got startled by the sound of a gun being fired on the other side of the wall. His instincts quickly kicked in and he leaped back immediately, realizing something was definitely up. His first thought was to call the cops, but knowing his history with the police, he knew they wouldn't believe a word he said, so keeping his nose out of trouble would be the right thing to do. But then again, that's where that sweet old couple lives, so in the end, he decided to just go and check up on them. And if everything is fine, he'll just make up an excuse that he wanted another slice of that strawberry shortcake. Coming out of his place, he found a man dressed in a weird costume banging on their door. Just then, his eyes landed on his hand and got startled seeing what that man was holding, since that thing looked like a knife. Before he could process what a man with a weapon was doing banging on that sweet old couple's door, he saw projectiles tearing through the other side of the door and going through the man's body. And yeah, that's when he realized something was definitely up. As for the guy, he almost instantly dropped. His body riddled with so many holes there was no way he was getting back up. Just then, the door to the place slowly started to open. And what do you know? Out came the same bastard from that alley. And the reason he was inside of that room was because some idiot gave him the wrong apartment number. As for his real target, yeah, he was standing right beside him. That's when both their eyes locked onto each other. And seeing his face, our boy finally realized what was going on. As for the guy, he immediately raised his gun towards the kid. But before he got a chance to pull the trigger, our hero had already slipped past the line of fire and knocked the gun aside. And using that opening, he struck the weapon with his palm. All that happened so fast that the guy's brain didn't even get a second to process the whole situation. And then boom, the stupid idiot, instead of hitting the guy's jaw to knock him out, punched his chest instead. Well, that hit was strong enough to literally send the man flying several meters back into the room, but he was still standing on his 2 feet. Oh boy, that's when he saw a sight that shook him to his core, as he noticed the lifeless bodies of the couple lying on the ground, and right next to the two, that same cake which he bought for them. As he was staring at the sight in terror, he heard the man's voice reminding him of what he had told him before, that he was going to enjoy himself, and promised this time there was no escaping for him. With that, he pulled the trigger once again, but our boy was faster than a literal bullet, and thanks to that, he managed to disarm the guy with a kick to his arm, followed by a full rage-filled fist right on the middle of his face, and the guy turned into a fountain of blood. But still, our boy wasn't done. After seeing what he did to those innocent people just to find him, he was seeing red, so he grabbed the guy's throat and getting right next to his face, he dared the guy to do something, since he was standing right in front of him. Instead of being worried, the fool began to smirk as he finally understood why this boy was called the Reaper. But then again, he knew firsthand what a soft-hearted idiot he was, since after each mission their boss always sends him to clean up his mess, since he never had the guts to finish the job. And now he was fully planning to use that hesitation of his to his advantage, and swung that knife at the kid's face. But just as he was about to drive it through his skull, another gunshot rang out through the place, and the man before him finally stopped moving. Realizing they weren't alone, he quickly turned to see who it was and noticed 2 individuals standing outside of the window. Well, it turns out one of them is that same weird haircut guy from that alley, and also the one responsible for pulling the trigger on that fool. Terrified, our hero asked for their identities and was reminded he should instead be thanking them. After all, they did save his life just now. But our hero was genuinely curious to know who these people were, since he didn't even hear them approaching or sense their presence the whole time. Plus, those weird clothes they wore looked just like the guy who got shot moments ago. But still, he knew he can't trust anyone, so he tried reaching for the blade but was immediately advised not to do that. The reason being, if he touched that thing, they would be forced to ascend him to the pearly gates just like the man under his butt. As he was politely explaining to the boy that you don't fuck around and find out, his female friend found the body of the man who received the American special a bit earlier, and clearly neither of the two were happy seeing their friend having more than 2 holes on his body. Well, minus nose and eye sockets, but who's counting? But surprisingly, they weren't that bummed out. Instead, the female instructed the dude to prepare the target for the jump while she took care of this guy. Not sure what they were planning, but the guy advised against it since with just the 2 of them, the risks were too high. But she, being a strong independent woman, decided to ignore his suggestion and reminded him how the cleaners were too far from this location and the target's soul was already in transit, so they didn't have time to wait for an anchor. I still have no clue what is going on since all I'm seeing is big words coming out of their mouths instead of an explanation, but she probably made sense to her partner since the guy agreed with her reasoning. As for our boy, whom they completely forgot about, he was left wondering what this talk about souls and jumping even meant. The woman, however, left her friend with one last warning, which was to not get any dumb ideas. Which obviously, him being a dude meant he was going to ignore her warning and do exactly the opposite. And the next thing our boy saw was the man sitting right in front of his face, praising his slick moves. Yeah, no, our boy didn't really swing that way, so he just asked the guy what all that talk about souls was, which only made the dude even more interested in him since not only was he capable and direct, his soul density wasn't that bad either. Exactly the kind of man he had been looking for. Then again, our hero, instead of running, hit him with another question. What was this soul density? Seeing how interested the boy was, the dude decided to show him instead, and while fidgeting with his watch, he told the kid they were assassins whose job is to take out a target twice, explaining how the first kill is the physical body, like what happened to that buddy of his, whereas the second time they take out the soul to prevent their reincarnation into the next life. For some reason, those words triggered a memory from his childhood, as he remembered seeing a man standing before the lifeless body of his mother, with something glowing in his hand. Snapping out of that memory, he heard the man reminding him how he didn't seem to like that guy besides him, and since they needed a helping hand at the moment, he invited him to join them in a trip to the world beyond theirs. A place called the Soul's Realm. Yeah, although he was somewhat believing what the man was saying, he still asked for proof. The woman, however, instead of paying any attention to the kid, suggested to her partner they drop this whole idea. After all, involving an outsider could prove risky. Weird Hair, on the other hand, wasn't planning on backing down after seeing what was on his phone, plus they were on the clock and didn't have much time left. And besides, there is more to this kid than meets the eye, so he showed her the phone, asking if she still thinks this kid couldn't handle the jump. Not sure what it was, but there was something about that kid's soul that even had the woman sweating, since it was unlike anything she had ever seen before. But for some reason, before she could point out why they were so interested in the kid, the man cut her off since once again time was of the essence, and asked our hero to get ready. So basically what they wanted to do was to move into that realm using the girl named Selena's power, but the thing is they need 2 people to make that jump, one who is doing the main work in there, and a second who acts as an anchor. So it's pretty straightforward. The anchor is keeping his partner from getting sucked into that world completely, which basically is a death sentence, so hopefully that explains it because it's a pretty simple setup. Yeah, no, these guys were starting to take our boy for a fool, thinking he was just going to believe the crap they were spewing, plus what was all this soul realm and reincarnation stuff they kept going on about, since to him it sounded like they were just pulling things straight out of a sci-fi web novel or something. In the middle of his screaming, he heard the man's voice asking him to shut up, and with a completely different expression on his face, he made one thing clear. He didn't give a damn whether the kid believed him or not. They had a job to finish and didn't have time for his doubts, so he suggested instead of being a pain in the ass, he actually listens to what they were saying. As for his questions, he was willing to give him answers, but only after they were done cleaning up the mess around them, and asked if he still wanted to know if spirits actually existed. Yeah, he did, more than anything, because for years he had been trying to make sense of what he saw that day, and if these guys could give him those answers, then he had no reason not to trust them. So with that in mind, he agreed to help them. That's all he wanted to hear, so he suggested to Selena they get the show started. Plus, he put her on watch duty while they do their thing inside that realm. Although she wasn't happy with how things turned out, she also knew they don't have many options, so she got ready to do as the man was saying. But just before sending them off, she warned Rain not to make her regret this. Just as she did that, a massive magical circle formed underneath their feet. As soon as that happened, Kasai noticed a bright yellow glow emanating from his chest, and gradually it started getting bigger in size, and before he knew it, the whole place went completely white. Next panel, and he opened his eyes and found himself standing in a completely different place. And the first thing he did was start to panic. As for the man behind him, he was impressed seeing how well his soul was doing on their very first jump. Kasai, on the other hand, wasn't in the mood for his games and demanded he tell him everything, and if they drugged him at that time to knock him out or something. Rain assured the kid they did no such thing. All he did was bring him to the soul realm to answer his questions, just as he asked. And since he was being a pain in the ass, he asked if he was planning on chickening out after coming so far. Yeah, no, not a chance. After everything he had been through, he was going to get to the bottom of what happened to his mother that day. Rain was happy hearing his answer, and since he was still after the truth of his parents' death, he promised he was going to tell him everything, but in exchange for that, he asked the kid to help him take down the soul of that man. Watching the crazy man jump off a literal building, Kasai tried stopping him, but by the time he got to the window, the man had already leapt off. But to his surprise, as he looked down, he found the guy standing on the wall like Spider-Man, and the look he was giving him at the time was really starting to piss the kid off. But since Rain was done having his fun, he suggested they start looking for this guy since they only got 15 minutes before this whole mission failed. But Kasai was more concerned about the fact that he was just casually walking down a building. That's when he heard a voice from the side explaining that the laws of physics don't exist in this realm. Yeah, a hovering ball with a freaking rifle on its head was the last thing he needed right now, so he jumped back in shock. Well, turns out that's just Selena, who's using that thing to scout the area while simultaneously taking care of their physical bodies in the real world to make sure no one gets to them, and to pull them out as soon as the mission was over. Then again, she reminded Rain. It was a dumb idea since this kid was just holding them back. Yeah, Rain was starting to think the same, but then again, they never told him anything, or what they do, so he suggested they start off with introductions and told the kid his name was Rain Choi, an assassin of the Soul Hunter Association. Our boy did the same and told the man his name, after which Rain began walking away, asking the kid to follow. Yeah, no, our boy was still sure this was a bad idea since this guy was literally telling him to jump off this building without any instructions. But then again, not like he had much of a choice since he already followed them this far, so he might as well see it through the whole way. So he said screw it, lifted his foot off the building floor, and as soon as he let go, his whole world shifted to a different angle, and now that wall of the building was his floor. That actually impressed the guy since he managed to pull it off on his first try. And since our hero did as the guy instructed, he demanded answers and what was going on. But the answer was the same. After the job was completed, he would tell him everything he wanted to know. Annoyed, he asked the man to at least explain to him why they were looking for a man who was already dead, and if by any chance he was saying they were planning on preventing that man's reincarnation. Bingo! That's exactly what they came here to do, to make sure that scum never steps foot in their world ever again. With that, he did something, and that same symbol appeared on his neck, followed by some dark electricity pouring out of his body. And the next thing Kasai saw was a sword made out of blood, manifesting in the guy's hand. That obviously shocked the kid since he just pulled a weapon out of thin air. That's when they heard Selena pointing out that she managed to locate their target. Turning to the location, they found an individual standing atop one of the buildings, emitting some kind of purple aura, which according to Rain was a corrupt soul. And this right here, friends, is a true example of being an anthro on the inside, because the dude's soul literally grew a tail after he died. And because of that, our hero was having a hard time believing that was the same man he knew when he was still alive. Rain informed the kid that was the true form of his soul, the one they came here to take out, and asked him not to move from this spot while he deals with the guy. But for some reason, Kasai wanted to tag along as well, but was reminded he was just brought to this place as an anchor. Meanwhile, simultaneously, Selena was trying to get Rain's attention, but before he could ask what, our hero reminded the fool he wasn't some puny kid who didn't know how to throw a punch and was sure he could prove useful. But once again, both of them were interrupted by Selena, who was trying to get Rain's attention about something else, and stuck in the middle of the two. The guy was really fighting the urge to knock both of them out, and this time the woman herself was at her limit, so she shouted for the guy to ignore that fool and listen to what she had to say. And this time, even Rain exploded on the woman, asking what was so important that she keeps pestering him like a child, and heard the woman telling him to take a look at the target since the guy was gone. Yeah, this was bad because by then the target was already behind him, and he sensed its presence as well. As for the loudmouth who just won't shut up and cause this whole mess, he shouted to the guy to look out. But guess he didn't need to scream like a scared kid, since Rain was more badass than he had expected. And this even shocked the lizard man because that man's reaction speed was just out of this world. Using this chance, Rain activated his bleeding crescent, and boom, an explosion rocked that part of the building, giving him enough time to create some distance between the two. I'm not too sure what happened here. Maybe the guy got pushed back a little too hard, or maybe the building under his feet gave out, but he went plummeting down towards who knows where, but luckily he managed to stop himself just in time. As for Rain, the guy was really starting to enjoy himself. Plus, he thanked the lizard man for saving him the trouble of climbing all the way up there to get to him. Just then, he heard footsteps of a person to the side, so he turned around and found our hero running at him for some reason. The guy tried reminding the kid what he told him earlier, that he was to stay out of this fight. But before he could finish that line, our hero grabbed the fool and moved him out of the way before he got shish kebab by those spikes. But in the process of doing so, they fell in the worst spot possible, because right underneath them was the lizard man getting ready to use that same attack again to take out both of them. Luckily, Rain managed to react just in time, so he pushed the kid off him, after which he kicked the air out of the poor boy's lungs, and at the same time another massive spike shot through the floor, but thankfully both men were already out of its path. As for Rain, the guy was still pissed he disobeyed his orders and jumped in without any plan. But Kasai was more angry about the fact that the man kicked him in the stomach instead of thanking him for saving his ass. Well, technically, according to Selena, kicking the air out of his lungs was saving his ass, so he couldn't really complain. By then, the creature had already started attacking again, and with everything going on, Rain was really starting to get pissed off. Plus, playing defensively was just wasting time, so he decided to switch things up a bit, and activated something called Crimson Rise, and a massive wave of blood shot out of his blade, hitting those spiky appendages dead on. Although that attack proved effective, the problem was the creature was now nowhere to be seen. Plus, it was sending its tentacles out from different locations, meaning it would be difficult to pinpoint its exact location. Just then, in the middle of all that, Rain saw another much more massive spike shooting through the ground and coming at him. Luckily, he managed to move out of the way just enough, plus he figured out the creature's strategy, and the reason it only shot one appendage this time meant it was compensating for the distance he created between them, meaning if he follows this one all the way down, this twisted whack-a-mole game would end. With that in mind, he activated his blood art, and boom, he came down like a meteor, crashing straight into the building. Okay, so turns out that move Flashy and all didn't do jack, because that's literally glass. He wasn't even able to deal enough damage to that glass and everything around him to shatter. Well, at least he managed to break it just enough to get inside of the room, and who knows how, he immediately sniffed out the hiding spot of that monster, which was on the other side of the wall he was pointing his blade at. Sure enough, as soon as he did that, cracks began forming on that part of the building, and then bam, the thing poked its head out, and it did not look happy seeing how it was being mocked. Rain didn't care about its feelings, all he cared about was cutting it in half, so he got into position to stop the thing. Back with our hero, who was complaining about how he got dragged into this place and was now stuck here doing nothing. Annoyed by his constant complaining, Selena reminded the kid this was his first time coming to this place, so there was a very real chance he might get himself killed. That actually surprised the kid. After all, it's not like this was his real body, so how can he die without receiving damage to his physical form? Well, apparently, even though that was true, his soul could still be destroyed inside of this place, and if that happens, his physical body would be just a shell, so to put it in simple terms, he would die. But she did assure the kid not to worry too much about that because apparently Rain is a powerhouse and something like that creature is nothing in front of him. Back with the guy, and he was having the time of his life, slicing through that monster. And then bam, another explosion was seen going off in the distance with something being shot out of that massive crater. And it was that lizard monster, and the dude was having a really hard time just keeping up with the guy's speed. And now with 7 minutes left on the clock, Rain leaped out of the building as well to finish this fight quickly. And to do so, he was planning on using his more powerful abilities, so he suggested the thing stop trying to resist, since it doesn't have any chance of walking out of this place with its life. Well, it turns out that guy isn't as mindless as he seemed. He still retained his memories from his past life, and because of that, he was sure this man was the one who took him out. Plus, the way he was moving inside of this world, and using his powers clearly meant this wasn't his first visit to this place, meaning his chances of stopping this guy were pretty much next to none. Which is why he decided to change his target, and in the distance, managed to pinpoint the location of a much easier opponent. And who else? It was our boy. With that in mind, he dug back into the building. By now, Rain was just getting annoyed with the guy constantly running away from the fight, but not this time. This time, Rain was serious, so he jumped right in with the monster. And with that, their cat and mouse chase began, and thanks to Rain's speed, he managed to catch up to the guy. But before he could get to him, they had already reached a dead end, so he kicked his way out of the building. That's when our hero spotted the two appearing in the distance. As both of them were focused on Rain and how cool he looked, they failed to spot the real danger that was now inches away from our boy's face. But luckily, his ultra instinct kicked in, and he managed to move his head out of the way just in the nick of time. Turning towards the one responsible, he found the man screaming his name, claiming he was going to make sure he gets the job done this time. Yeah, right? Like Rain was going to let that happen, so he stepped in, reminding the fool who his real opponent was. Seeing that there was no way out, the lizard freak got ready to make a do-or-die move. But first, he had a question. Why was he so bent on killing him? Well, the answer was simple. This was their job, to make sure scum like him don't get to step foot into their world a second time. Yeah, he didn't seem to like that answer, especially with that kid standing behind him, and seeing how ridiculous all of this was, he began laughing uncontrollably. And the reason he was laughing was because if there was anyone in this place who deserved to be erased from existence, it was the kid standing behind him. Well, turns out this kid did some pretty nasty shit in the past, which also earned him the title of the Reaper. And according to the lizard man, if his hands were stained with blood, then that kid was drowning in it. So he told Rain to cut it out with this hypocritical bullshit. Yeah, no, Rain didn't really care about his feelings or who was more guilty here. All he knew was that his target was the lizard man, and he was determined to finish the job no matter what. Furious, the guy began shooting those appendages towards the fool to shut him up for good. Plus, he didn't even care anymore. All he wanted was to take Kasai to hell along with him. Seeing the things coming, Rain prepared his weapon to defend himself, but to his surprise, those things completely ignored him and went towards Kasai instead. This obviously scared the man since he wasn't ready for this. Our hero was just as equally shocked as Rain, resulting in his body completely freezing on the spot. And at that moment, as those things were inches away from him, he saw his whole life flashing before his eyes. And all those times and the stupid mistakes he made began replaying in his head. And then he completely froze as the sound of those things tearing through flesh echoed through the entire area, and no, it wasn't his flesh those things tore through, but Rain's, who sacrificed himself to save the kid. Seeing the man bleeding, the only thing the kid could do was ask the reason, and was reminded by the man it was him who dragged him into this place, so his safety was his responsibility. But the lizard man, on the other hand, called him a fool for sacrificing himself for that boy, since now there was no one left here who was strong enough to stop him, and because of that, both of them were going to die. Watching the bleeding man in his arms, Kasai remembered all the people he lost over the years and everyone he failed to protect because he was just too weak to do so, and that made him feel like a complete piece of shit. Recalling his past, he remembered how he joined these people, thinking he was too weak back then, and joining them would make him strong enough to get to the killer of his parents, or at the very least change his own future, so he kept following orders without any questions. But in the end, nothing changed. He was still that same old pathetic loser who relied on others' strength to make himself seem strong. Just then, as all those thoughts were going through his head, he heard a voice calling out to him, asking what was it that he desired. At that time, the only thing he could think of was the power to destroy the man before him. And the reason was because he had known this man since he was just a child. And knowing the kinds of things this man did over the years and the lives he ruined, he knew damn well what Rain was trying to do was the right thing. Since a sadistic bastard like this shouldn't get another chance at life. Whoever it was, they were amused by his answer, which is why they decided to lend him their own power, instructing the kid to reach into the abyss and he would find what he was looking for. By then, the lizard man also realized something was definitely wrong, because for some reason the kid before him was emanating some kind of thick yellow aura. And then bam! 2 Darksiders-style guns made out of darkness manifested in the kid's hands. But Kasai, on the other hand, was still unable to process what he was seeing right now and how these 2 weapons appeared in his palms out of nowhere. But the fool before him knew exactly what just happened, and no way in hell was he giving him the time to use those things. So he launched those appendages at the kid to end him. But once again, as the kid froze at the sight, Rain had to use what little strength he had left in his body to protect him from the attack. Turning around, he found the man smirking at the kid. Well, apparently this had been his plan all along. At the time when he sacrificed himself to save the kid, he knew the boy's potential, and he wanted to unlock this power sleeping inside of him. And now that he succeeded, he asked the kid to finish what he started. That's all Kasai needed to hear, so he locked in, raised both his guns at the fool, and then pulled the trigger, resulting in a massive wave of golden energy being shot from the weapon and going straight at the lizard man. Not sure how he didn't get blown away by the recoil on that thing, but at least his aim was spot on because the beam was headed straight at the fool. And the reason why the guy wasn't moving was because there was no place to move. All he saw before his eyes was a gigantic skull of the Ghost Rider coming at him with his jaws wide open. At those final moments, he tried blocking the attack using those appendages, but it was useless, and those things instantly began melting away, resulting in a massive explosion that shot through the other side of the building and erupted into the distance. As for Selena, the woman was out of words after seeing how thick that boy's soul density was, and was reminded by a smirking Rain what he told her earlier, that this kid had potential. As for the lizard man, in his final moments he told the kid how it was impossible to run from his past. After all, without them he'd be nothing right now, and was sure sooner or later he'd get what's coming to him for betraying all of them. Just then he heard Selena warning the 2 about something that was going on in the real world, so she was pulling them both out immediately. As soon as she said that, our hero opened his eyes once more. Getting up, he found himself lying on the floor of the same apartment where that sweet old couple lived, and to the side saw the motionless body of the lizard man. As soon as his eyes landed on that face, he recalled his final words, how he claimed Kasai would have been nothing without them. But our boy thought otherwise, since going to them was the worst mistake of his life, because if not for that, his hands wouldn't be so bloodstained. Deciding not to think too much about it, he asked Rain how he was doing. After all, he had multiple holes on his torso just moments ago. The guy assured him he was fine, that damage wasn't dealt to his physical body, so he'll be back to 100% after a good night's rest. In the middle of all that, our boy got startled hearing loud banging on the main door of the apartment, followed by a person's voice demanding they open up. Well, apparently this was the problem Selena was talking about earlier. Someone called the cops on them, all thanks to the commotion they caused. And that one statement hit our hero like a truck, because cops banging on the door only meant one thing. These 2 idiots weren't with the authorities, meaning he had just risked his life to help some random criminals take down a man's soul. Well, technically, they never said they were with the feds, so that was on him. As for Rain, knowing they were out of time, he picked up his partner and suggested the kid stop overthinking and decide what he wanted to do from here on. Selena practically said the same thing, though her way of saying it was slapping a mask on his face, after which she brought out her weapon and made one thing clear to our hero. They didn't work for anyone. They were simply assassins, and there was no way they were stopping to give their statements to the cops like some good citizens. But she did point out that no one was stopping him from staying here and wished him good luck in explaining to the cops what happened inside this place moments ago. Yeah, he knew the girl was right. Plus, with his outstanding criminal record in the police's eyes, they won't even listen before putting the whole blame on him and throwing him behind bars. So in the end, he apologized to the old couple and got ready to follow the 2. But his sentimental moment was cut short by an annoyed Selena, who was clearly irritated by his mumbling and told him to make up his mind already. Just then, the door to the place slammed open, followed by a bunch of cops storming into the place. But by then, the 3 had already disappeared, leaving behind the lifeless bodies of the victims and the lizard man. But the dude in the front was certain he heard voices coming from this place, so he asked his men to search the whole building. That's when his eyes landed on a nearby building where a bunch of lunatics were seen running on the roof of the place, so he immediately pulled out his walkie-talkie and called for backup. Following his orders, a police car appeared on the scene and began pursuing the shadowy figures. But the problem was he should have called for a chopper, because how on earth are they going to catch up to those people in a car? As for the 3 suspects, wait, I'm pretty sure I've seen this before somewhere. I can't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, I've definitely seen this before. Well, anyway, our hero was surprisingly good at running, so he easily managed to outrun the 2 behind him and almost got his head blown off after getting a little too cocky. Not sure what country this is, but damn, the cops around these parts don't mess around, and they began blasting the 3 with a hail of bullets instead of just arresting them. Realizing their path was blocked, Rain asked Selena to do something. The girl complied and did a cool move with her piece, resulting in a bunch of bullets being shot from the weapons simultaneously. And man, I thought she was the Sakura of the squad, but no, the girl is actually a badass, because not only did she manage to stop most of those bullets, she even destroyed the weapons of the cops who were shooting at them. Despite spending most of his life surrounded by criminals and mass murderers, Kasai was genuinely impressed by the woman, and that got him wondering just who the hell are these people, because pulling off something like that should have been impossible. But then again, they were the reason he was in this mess to begin with, so he wasn't planning on praising her or anything. The girl, however, couldn't give a damn about that and suggested he stop whining and focus on running because he was causing too much commotion that would give away their position to the cops. And to make it even worse, Rain was praising him for having excellent stamina for being able to keep up with them and asked if he did this often. Yeah, no, seeing how the 2 of them were making this whole thing seem like a joke, he reminded them he just threw away everything he'd been working towards for the past year, so he better get some real good explanation when they get out of this mess. Well, Rain didn't have any problems with that. As for Selena, she reminded the 2 to stop goofing around because they were almost at the safe house. Hearing her words, the man literally jumped off that multi-story building, and looking all cool, he went straight down like a champ and ruined it all by crashing straight into a dumpster. Yeah, the 2 of them didn't even know what to say at this point, and since they didn't want to smell like rotting trash for the rest of the day, they decided to take the fire escape instead. After a bit, they were seen standing in an alleyway, with our heroes still trying to figure out what they were doing here and what their escape plan was. To that, Selena twisted a key, resulting in a hatch leading into the sewers opening up, which was their escape plan. Yeah, hearing that these guys were living down there like Ninja Turtles, our hero was seriously starting to regret following them. After a bit, they were inside the place with Selena informing the kid they have safe houses like this one all over the city. Yeah, no, Kasai wasn't exactly impressed, especially after seeing the kinds of things the 2 of them can do, because this place didn't really seem that safe to him. Well, it turns out it was because they weren't inside of the safe house yet, so she brought out some kind of an amulet or something with the same symbol on its screen, resulting in the whole place vibrating like crazy. The next thing he heard was Rain's voice telling him to hold on to his guts because things were about to get rough, and sure enough, at that exact second, he felt everything start to fall, followed by the terrified screams of our hero echoing through the whole place. Story cuts to an elevator, and yeah, you guessed it, behind it was the gang, with our boy spilling his guts out after that insane ride. That's when his eyes landed on something that had him a bit surprised, as he spotted 3 individuals walking up to them, and the one in the front, with feet bigger than his own head, asked the reason for bringing a dead person inside this place. Well, turns out he didn't realize that the dead person was one of their own men. So Rain told him the guy needs immediate attention since he's got like 10 minutes before he gets isekai'd to another world. To that, the guy instructed one of his hooded friends to take the boy to the operating room immediately. And with that taken care of, he turned his attention towards the little guest they brought along and asked about his story. Selena told the man the whole thing, how they found this stray puppy with a soul thick as your mama. So they decided to adopt him after he helped them inside the soul realm. So yeah, that was pretty much the whole story. Yeah, safe to say the man wasn't exactly thrilled hearing that they took a bystander inside of the soul's realm instead of calling for backup. But still, it isn't every day Selena acknowledges someone else's talents, so he believed the boy was indeed strong. However, that doesn't change the fact that he's a civilian who can most definitely compromise their whole operation if left alive. Seeing that barrel of the gun pointed at his eye, Kasai completely froze. And seeing how neither of the 2 were trying to stop the man, he realized this whole thing was just a setup so they could get rid of him without drawing too much suspicion. As for why they were doing this, it was because these people knew from the start who he really was and what he did in the past, and because of that, he was about to join that lizard man in the afterlife. With that, the sound of a gun being fired was heard echoing through the building. But for some reason, what they saw after that shocked all 3 of them, since it turns out our hero was faster than that bullet, and he managed to move his head out of the way just in time, after which he grabbed the gun with his 2 hands and swung his leg towards the guy's face. Well, that worked, because to save his face, the guy let go of the weapon. Yeah, but that smirk on his face for some reason didn't seem like he was worried about losing his weapon. But then he noticed something, and when he looked to the side, he found his cigar lying not far from him. As he got distracted by that, our hero got into position to shoot a few holes into the guy. But as he looked ahead, the man was nowhere to be seen. That's when he heard his voice praising him for having decent skill, so he turned to the source of that sound. But in doing so, he took his eyes off his weapon, giving the man the opportunity he needed, and he karate chopped the thing out of his hand, after which he followed up with a punch under the kid's chin. But once again, Kasai managed to slip out of the way just in time. And now with the weapon out of the picture, it was mano a mano. And then bam, the kid turned into a freaking machine, landing punch after punch on the guy with inhuman speed. But despite him literally copying Luffy's moveset, the guy was so pathetically weak that not a single one of his punches managed to connect. And by now the redhead was certain. This kid went through some kind of military training in the past. Not sure how this panned out, but in the middle of all that, the gun that was seen flying through the air moments ago landed back in the kid's hands, and with that it was now checkmate. But then again, he wasted too much time in yapping, giving the guy enough time to slip right under the gun. And this time he wasn't playing around either, as he racked the slide of the weapon and ejected the chamber before he even had the time to react, following up with a leg sweep to get him off his feet. Still, Kasai wasn't out of the fight just yet. He planted his hand on the floor, lifted himself into the air, and brought down the wrath of his fury on the man's head. But once again, the guy disappeared, resulting in his attack shattering the ground instead. Looking to the side, he found the guy standing there with his hand inside of his long coat. And after seeing what the kid was capable of, he realized why Selena spoke so highly of him. But that wasn't enough to change his mind, since this place wasn't an after-school club, just anyone could join whenever they feel like it. Surprisingly, this time Rain stepped in to stop the man, which the guy didn't appreciate, so he asked the kid to move. But the guy refused. After all, he helped them take down that lizard man, so he owes him one. So he suggested he first test that kid's soul density in the ethereal chamber before spilling his brains out. Realizing the man wasn't messing around, he agreed to give the boy a chance. But he did remind Rain of who that kid really was, because he had been on their target list for quite some time now for being one of the members of Yamara. Kasai agreed that he used to work for those people, but also made it clear he left all that behind him over a year ago. Rain also backed him up on that, since he saw with his own eyes that Kasai was the one who tried stopping that man and even took him out inside the spirit realm. Yeah, no, the guy didn't even bother paying attention to the fool and turned towards Selena instead to hear her take on the kid. The girl confirmed what Rain just said was really true. It was Kasai who eliminated that guy, and based on that, she can confidently say they were truly enemies. But still, that didn't mean she trusted him, and asked the reason for attacking that man. Well, he didn't know how to explain this to them, but that gang isn't a place anyone can come and go as they please, meaning they have a very special kind of send-off waiting for those kinds of people, one that involves a lot of pain and knives. Rain also chimed in, reminding the girl how well this kid did inside of the soul realm on his very first jump, which is why he strongly believes this boy has a chance at redemption by becoming a proficient soul hunter. Rain pushing him so much for a random kid was really starting to force the guy to reconsider. After all, this isn't like him. But first he had a question, so he asked where he got his special training from. The kid answered, telling the man it was Yomura himself who trained him personally since he was a kid. That was an interesting answer, because that would mean he and Yomura must be really close. So he asked what would he do if he was given an order to assassinate that very man. Yeah, that was a question Kasai wasn't ready for, so he didn't know how to answer him. But then again, knowing firsthand the kind of suffering that man had caused to innocent people, a demon like that doesn't deserve a second chance at life. Although Kasai knew that was true, the way he answered wasn't exactly screaming convincing, and the guy managed to pick up on that almost instantly. But then again, our boy told him he promised himself he was going to leave that past of his behind, and was asked why he even came here if that was the case, since killing is their line of work. The kid told him his sob story, how when he was a child he saw someone breaking into his house and stealing his parents' souls. But back then, no one believed what he had to say. Hell, even he himself didn't believe what he saw, and used to think he was just going crazy, which is why he followed these two to find out more about this soul realm. Well, apparently he really was going crazy, because in all his years of working in this business, he had never heard of anything even close to stealing souls. The only thing anyone knows is that you can destroy souls, not trap them. Kasai didn't care what was real or not, so he asked for a chance to prove himself so he could get to the truth of his parents' deaths and why the two of them were targeted by that person. Well, the guy wasn't entirely against helping him find those answers. Hell, he even acknowledged his skills in the real world. But that didn't mean he was anything special, because in their line of work, that's only half the battle. But still, he agreed with Rain about giving him a chance. So before getting to the fun part of blowing his brains out, he wanted to see just how special his soul really was. Just as he stopped next to a massive wall, the stone structure began rising into the air, and on the other side was a completely different scene, as Kasai noticed a bunch of massive tube-looking things in the center of the room. So he asked the men what he was looking at. The guy explained that what he was seeing in front of him is something called an ethereal chamber that allows a person to simulate his soul in the soul realm without the potential threat of getting pulled into the reincarnation cycle. Or in simple words, he can spar inside of that place to his heart's content without worrying about his soul getting obliterated. Turning to the goofy-haired kid by the name of Tom, he instructed him to fire the thing up and pick something fun for them, and when asked how many people would be making the jump, the man answered 2. But no, he wasn't the second person. He wasn't about to waste his time on some random kid, so Selena would be his opponent. Not sure if he was being sexist here or what, but he didn't seem to like the idea of fighting a girl, and was told to pipe down because Rain was way over his league and he wasn't stepping into that realm with a sinner like him. As for the girl, she didn't really care either, so she smacked him on the back of his head and told him to get his act together and follow her to the pods. Yeah, Kasai knew he only had 2 choices now, either he whoops her ass and joins the soul hunters, or second, Leo executes him. But then again, they all seem to have a common enemy, so if he works with them, he might even be able to avenge the old couple. But if not, and he somehow escapes from this place, cops would most definitely get to him sooner or later, and he would get locked up behind bars in no time. Yeah, he knew he has no other choice. The only way to survive was to whoop her ass and use them to find out more about this soul business and what happened to his parents. With that, both of them were seen standing inside of those pods. So Leo gave the signal to Goofy Hair. As soon as the machine activated, Kasai felt a strange sensation wash over him as if his consciousness was being torn away from his body. And then poof, 1 second he was in that room, the next second he was standing in the middle of a massive hallway. Not like he could complain, so he got into his stance to face the woman. For some reason, Selena herself didn't like the stage they picked for this test and called out Tom on that. Turning towards the kid, she asked him to pull out his guns. Well, that's the problem, he never got a crash course on that, so he didn't really know how to. Yeah, she was just getting frustrated at this point. So in the end, she decided to just finish this fight quickly and get it over with. Yep, the kid knew he was screwed the moment he saw the barrel of that thing being pointed at his head. Next panel, and he was seen running for his life while screaming at the girl for not even giving him time to prepare. And in the very next instant, he appeared right behind her somehow. Oh yeah, Selena realized this was bad, and she was not happy seeing how that Tom screwed her. On the outside, Rain also commented on the same thing, saying he picked the worst possible stage for that girl, and was reminded by Tom that Leo said to make it fun, and apparently that woman's suffering is his idea of fun. Back in the fight, not sure how, but Kasai got his hands on some kind of a shield which he was using to stop the girl's bullets. But not like that was stopping the girl, and she kept punching holes through that thing. But her aim was so terrible that not a single one of those shots hit its target. Meanwhile, Kasai was analyzing her fighting style, and seeing how her weapon also shot some kind of an energy wave instead of actual bullets, he wondered how he could summon his own weapons. And since that was the only way of stopping that woman, he decided to buy himself some more time, until he figured out how weapons worked in the Soul Realm. And the only way he could think of buying more time was to try and get under her skin. So he started their conversation with that Leo, and how both of them seemed close, so he asked if they knew each other for a long time, and the answer was a yes. Then came the second question, what's her relationship with that guy? Selena told the kid he was her mentor, but our boy thought otherwise. After all, seeing how that man trusted her more than Rain, it meant there was more to this than she was letting on. Well, apparently she indeed was hiding something. Their relationship wasn't just that of mentor and student. A long time ago, that man saved her life, so she owed everything to him, and that's all he needed to know. And for that reason, she dedicated herself to becoming the greatest marksman in the country. With that, boom, she shot an energy wave towards the floor, and the thing ricocheted towards the ceiling and bounced right back down, going straight for Kasai's head. And boom, that whole thing exploded, taking Kasai down with it. But wait, don't think our Chad was going to get taken out with something like that, because from some other part of the place Selena heard his voice, so she turned around and found the fool stepping out of one of the doors, while commenting on her last statement about becoming the best marksman in the country, which was kind of funny to him, because with that poor aim, she wasn't even able to hit little old him even once. Oh boy, the whole place froze, realizing that boy is really dead now. Sure enough, the girl began blasting the guy with relentless bullets, but the fool kept jumping around the whole place like a monkey, and managed to dodge all of them while simultaneously closing in the distance to land one blow to end the fight. Yeah, but here's the thing, Selena had been toying with him all along. She could have ended that fight long ago if she wanted to, and both men knew that she was now pissed and done playing games. Back in the fight, the kid was continuing to taunt Selena by saying weird stuff about her and Leo, and how she spent so much of her life looking for validation from an old man. And in the middle of it all, he dove into one of the rooms and vanished. Following that, the girl stopped to see where he would appear from, only for him to appear from the ceiling, giving her no time to dodge. So she ended up meeting his kick head on and managed to block it, using her own arm. And no, that didn't do jack. Not sure if you guys noticed it or not, but this woman is healthy as hell, and that's not just fat on her body. She is one tough cookie, meaning a pathetic attack like that won't even leave a scratch on her. And with that, bam, she pulled the trigger on the fool, causing him to go flying back in the opposite direction. But even then, the kid refused to give up and managed to land back on his feet. As for Selena, seeing how far he was going to try and beat her, she was starting to get curious about his reasoning for being so desperate about joining them and learning about the Soul Realm. The kid didn't have anything to say to her, so instead he began running towards one of the doors of the place, and when he stepped out, he found the girl's weapon, pointing right at his face. And with that, it was checkmate. Next panel, and he was seen being shot into a wall with the full brunt of her attack hitting his body. And apparently that was it. His eyes went white and he completely lost consciousness. Well, turns out, while he was monkeying around and running his mouth moments ago, she was learning and memorizing all the pathways, and the men outside this place realized that as well, which is why they knew the kid stood no chance against her. She reminded the fool the only chance he had of beating her was by using his weapons, but instead of focusing on that, he kept trying to ambush her, and that was his mistake. Oh, damn, I know they said he can't die in here, but I'm not too sure about that. Look at that gaping hole in the middle of his chest. As his consciousness began to fade, he heard a voice inside his head, the same voice he heard when facing against that lizard man. The next thing he knew, he was falling into an endless void as the voice asked if this truly was the full extent of his power. The voice reminded him how not only did he fail to protect the people he cared for, but was even too weak to avenge them, and asked if he was going to give up just like this. It told the kid he was so close to the truth he had been searching for, which is why he can't give up now and needs to get back up and find out the truth behind the death of his parents. At that moment, Kasai finally opened his eyes and found himself being wrapped in a set of massive bony fingers, with a creature made out of darkness smiling at him from the shadows, commenting the two of them weren't done yet. With that, bam! All that power hidden inside the boy finally exploded as he got consumed by darkness, and it literally began shattering the space they were standing on, which obviously scared the woman, so she asked the guys outside what was going on. Well, apparently even they had no clue. All Tom could say was that the boy's soul density was overwhelming their system, resulting in that environment beginning to collapse. But according to Rain, that shouldn't be the case since he measured that boy's density and it shouldn't be at that level. But Tom reminded the fool numbers don't lie. As it turns out, a normal person's soul density is around 500. Rain's is a special case with soul density at 6,500, but this boy's is at 56,000 and is still growing, and the only person in the history of their bureau to reach those numbers is Leo. Yeah, well that was all interesting and all, but they weren't the ones standing inside of a crumbling domain, so she suggested they do something and fast, because for some reason Kasai wasn't looking like Kasai anymore. He was, wait, is that Ichigo's mask from Bleach? Next chapter, and the kid had completely lost it. He wasn't in control anymore, which got Rain wondering if that form could be his soul ignition, but according to Tom, that wasn't the case. The one standing there was still Kasai, but there is something else in there too. Back with the kid, who was done with his flashy transformation, so he immediately charged at the girl to end her. Watching him coming, Selena got into position as well and was pretty confident he won't be able to close in the distance between them before she pulls the trigger. Well damn, turns out she was wrong, because not even letting her finish that thought, the boy appeared right before her eyes, and she realized on the spot she was screwed. But not giving up, she squeezed that trigger, resulting in an energy wave being shot out of the thing, which the boy easily managed to dodge. He planted his arm on the ground and came spinning like a freaking Beyblade at her head. Selena's instincts kicked in. She raised her arm to protect that beautiful face of hers, but as the hit connected, she realized it was no use, because she could literally feel her bones vibrating because of the impact. And then bam, she got launched into the air, flying several meters away from the impact while crashing through anything that came in her path. Although that hit was brutal, she was still conscious somehow, and oh boy, let me tell you, she was not happy about any of this because not only was that kid overpowered, he was getting stronger and faster with each minute. Before she could come up with a plan to stop him, Kasai used one of those portals to appear behind the woman. And at that moment, she cursed Tom for screwing her over by picking this stage, which meant it was now going to be even harder to deal with this guy. Sure enough, Kasai began charging up for another energy blast, and knowing she won't be able to survive or dodge that attack, she herself activated her bullet art, and kaboom, both their attacks collided. Yeah, well, it turns out that wasn't enough to stop that attack, because Kasai's attack not only shattered her ability, it tore right through it, landing directly on the girl, and with that, the whole place fell silent as Kasai was the only one left standing in the domain. Following that, panic broke out outside because that woman's soul signal completely vanished from the system, and they weren't able to locate her anywhere. I don't know about you guys, but I was so glad at this part because it's too early for us to be losing such a promising female character. But still, both her arms were completely burned, followed by a nasty bruise on her right thigh. As it would have it, at the last second before the impact, she channeled her soul density to go on the defensive, which allowed her to block off most of that damage, and if it wasn't for that, those arms would have been the least of her worries. Plus, she wondered just who the hell is this kid, since in terms of raw power, she had never faced anything like this in the past. Because that kid at the moment seems like a beast who is relying purely on instinct to kill. And if that was the case, then she might actually have a shot at stopping him, so she launched another one of her energy beams, but once again Kasai was just too fast and he managed to stop it just in time. Well, what do you know, that was just a distraction. The only thing there was her rifle. As the kid was trying to understand what just happened or if he managed to blow her into smithereens, he failed to notice a green light that was appearing from below him. And then bam, Mulgaraga Kure no Jutsu. She pulled a move straight out of Naruto's book and landed a devastating punch under the kid's chin. Oh yeah, if you think she was done, think again. Because she immediately grabbed one of his arms and whacked another fist across the side of his jaw, and that one hit rocked the kid's whole world. Oh man, this fight is so peak and the art style is just insane. I mean, she destroyed that fool with just 2 punches. Meanwhile, on the outside, the men were staring at the whole scene in disbelief because that woman is scary as hell when she's mad. Well, Leo wasn't surprised. He raised that girl since she was a child and knew full well what she is capable of. Plus, this was a battle between raw power and technique, and in a battle like that, technique always wins. And sure enough, fueled with rage, the kid began going berserk and started blasting those energy blasts non-stop towards the woman, but she was able to dodge all of them with ease. Furious, Kasai grabbed onto his arm, transferred all of his energy into that gun for one final attack. And he just let it rip, and this time that attack was massive enough to cover a considerable amount of area and destroyed everything in its path. And with that, his body began giving out as he ran out of energy and he started losing consciousness. That's when Selena appeared from one of those doors to blow his brains out and end this once and for all. And her final words to the kid were for him to be a good boy and stay down this time. And then everyone saw her ultimate move tearing through the whole space and hitting Kasai dead on his face. Yep, with that, it was officially over. One of the most epic fights I've seen this month. Well, apparently, according to that thing, whatever it is hovering next to the girl, the kid was still alive and the creature suggested she don't kill him. Yeah, she knew that, so to save the kid, she used another one of her abilities, and some kind of a creature's jaw or something appeared and caught Kasai before he got lost in the endless void. With the kid finally restrained, she asked Tom to pull them out because she was done. Yeah, well, apparently they had been underestimating our hero, because the moment the girl turned her gaze towards the boy, all she saw was a ginormous skull of a demon flying at her in full speed. And this was something even Rain wasn't expecting, because that boy somehow got even stronger, and realizing this time Selena's life was truly in danger, he shouted for the machine to be turned off. But it was already too late to do anything, and that massive thing shot a dense energy blast right at the woman. And well, damn, I don't think she's coming back after this one, boys. RIP, she was a really promising one. Oh wait, look, green energy blast. We might actually have hope here. And no, those weren't blasts. They were some kind of spikes that shot through Kasai's body and restricted his movements. Furious, the kid looked up at the one responsible and saw something thick and muscular coming at his face. Oh yeah, she's completely lost it now because she is done holding back, so she smashed the kid's face into the ground with full force. And realizing how dangerous the boy truly was, she was planning on punching a hole in his skull to rid the world of such a terrifying monster, knowing full well if he lost control in the future, there won't be anyone strong enough to stop him. But just as she was about to, a hand appeared stopping her gun. Turning around, she found both guys standing next to her. Well, can you guys see the irony here? That kid, after going berserk, was hammering the hell out of the poor girl, and none of them stepped in to help her, and just as she was about to pull the trigger on him, both of them suddenly appeared like they were concerned about both of them. Well, whatever. At least Leo is now convinced they shouldn't waste this kid's potential by ending him. As for Mommy, whose rock-hard abs you guys should definitely not be thinking about licking right now because I definitely sure am not, thought otherwise because whatever was sleeping inside of that boy was far too dangerous. Leo agreed, but he was sure with a bit of fine-tuning, they would be able to get him under control, because this kid was exactly the kind of monster they needed for the kind of man they were trying to bring down. Next chapter, and we are inside a hospital where a bunch of surgeons are performing emergency surgery on that guy who got blasted by that lizard man to revive him, and outside the room is Rain, waiting for news from the doctors. As it would have it, Rain doesn't really like visiting hospitals because he lost someone precious to him in the past in this place, and now he was forced to come here once again for a friend. Just then, he saw Selena walking out of the room, so he asked how the surgery went. Well, apparently the guy didn't make it, so she apologized to Rain. Scene cuts to another place where a bunch of people from the department had gathered for a briefing about their next mission. In the same room was a loudmouth kid by the name of Carrie Wolf, a rank 2 hunter, who was bored out of his mind and was asking the reason for this sudden call. Right next to him, a female by the name of Ashley Johnson, a rank 3 hunter, who was telling the fool to behave in front of their superiors. Our duo was also in the same place and were getting really annoyed by that man's constant screaming. That's when a mustachioed guy by the name of Vikram Khan, a rank 1 hunter, suggested to the boy he stop yelling in the room, and the kid immediately complied. To the side was Jason White, chief of the New York Police Department, who was more interested about a new face in the room and asked for his introduction. And of course it was our boy, who was still trying to recover from that head stomp he received from Selena during their fight, which knocked him out. As for his rank, these idiots designated him as rank 5 even though he practically whooped Selena's ass in there. On the main stage was Leo, who was telling everyone that the reason he called all of them to this place was because of Kasai, because they were recruiting him to the team as well to take down Yamura. As for his introduction, he told the room Kasai used to be part of Yamura's inner circle. Yeah, he probably shouldn't have started his introduction with that because almost immediately half the room turned towards the kid to shred him into pieces. So Rain had to chime in as he explained to all of them Kasai used to work for those people, but he left, and now he was going to help them take down that whole organization. But obviously the room was against that idea. Plus it was hard for them to wrap their head around the idea that this puny little kid was the one who took down that lizard man. In the middle of all that, our hero raised his arm since he also had a question, and turning to the old man besides him, he informed the man about his recent run from the cops after the death of that old couple. So why was he in this room? Since he had a feeling the cops didn't really like them. Well, those deaths were exactly the reason he was invited to this place because he needs answers about what went down at the time. Plus, each one of those deaths was linked to none other than Kasai, an ex-mafia member of Naraka, whose hands are already stained with the blood of innocents. That actually annoyed the kid, so he asked if he came here to arrest him or something. Well, the answer was a no, because if it were up to him, he'd suffer far worse than just time behind bars. But lucky him, the NYPD has a special arrangement with the Soul Hunters, so he was safe for now. Well, at least until he is working for the Soul Hunters, that is. That's when Vikram chimed in and asked about the progress of their mission, and if this kid was the only reason all of them were called to this place. That was indeed a good point, so Leo began by briefing everyone on what they had managed to gather so far about the Naraka gang. So basically, he named a bunch of people, but I'm too lazy to list all of that, so here's the gist of it. They don't know jack about their opponents. So Kasai had to step up to correct them, and in the long speech he gave, he pointed out some guy named Shark, who wasn't actually part of the gang, just a hired gun they used to eliminate their enemies. As for a man named Ray the Devil, he died 3 years ago. But somehow these people were still looking for him. And to finish it off, he told them about the second in command of that gang, which was Yomura's biological son by the name of Engine. Okay, so to put it in simple words, their intelligence sucks, and that they didn't even know that the man they were hunting has a son. But Kasai wasn't done. That son of that man wasn't in the city. He left for New York 10 years ago and never returned, so he can't tell them much about him. Carrie still wasn't buying the stuff the kid just told them. The reason being he used to be part of that gang, and who knows, he still is working for those guys and is trying to feed false information to them. Rain, understandably annoyed, just gave him a look and asked for how long he has been looking for that man, and if the info they have so far was enough to get to those people, because from what he can tell, the kid isn't lying about anything. But Ponytails took Carrie's side this time since she herself wasn't fully convinced that kid was on their side, and by the way, great job artist on this panel. That's when Selena spoke up, taking the side of our hero, since that kid destroying the soul of a commander of that organization was proof enough he has no ties to them anymore. Plus, the way both of them were acting inside of that realm, and how that lizard man was trying to take out Kasai clearly showed they were enemies. Vikram, however, wasn't convinced, and the reason was her fight with the kid. Because after seeing the footage, it didn't really seem like Kasai was a rookie inside of those realms, since he was moving pretty comfortably in that space. Plus, he didn't really believe the nonsense he told them about not remembering what happened during the latter half of that battle. By now, Kasai was really starting to get annoyed by all these people treating him like a traitorous spy, since he was the one helping them achieve something they could never do on their own, so he suggested they show a little gratitude. If that was the case, then Vikram suggested he try to become worthy of his gratitude. In response to that, Kasai said something along the lines of him not needing their approval, which didn't sit well with Carrie. So he brought out his weapon to end him. Oh boy, this escalated quickly, because now pretty much everyone had their weapons pointed at each other, and from the looks on their faces, it didn't seem like they were messing around either. And to make it worse, the fool suggested to the guy they take this outside so he can really show him what he was capable of, which annoyed Rain, since instead of trying to defuse the situation, he was full-on fueling it. Thankfully, Leo spoke up before things started getting bloody, and his decision was final. They are taking in Kasai for the time being in order to take down Naraka. And well, not sure what kind of monster that man is, but not a single one of them had the guts to challenge his authority. Before they could get started, Kasai had something to say. And when asked what, he asked permission to grab some stuff from his apartment, basically a memento from his parents. That brought a smirk on his face, since this kid was actually a softie on the inside, so he gave him the permission, plus he instructed Selena, Ashley, and Carrie to accompany him. Story fast forwards and all four of them were seen making their way towards the kid's apartment. But unbeknownst to them, someone had already set up an ambush inside of the building and were just waiting for them to step into the apartment so they could take them down. Cut to Rain, who had come to a hospital to check up on someone, and was telling them about Kasai, and judging by that same hair color, probably his relative. Apparently, whoever this woman is, she had been in a coma for quite some time now, so Rain comes to visit her from time to time. And today he came to tell her about another partner he lost during a mission. Well, turns out the woman is his mother, but honestly she looks more like a sister. As for Rain, he was complaining about how he was getting tired of seeing all his partners losing their lives in front of him. So he promised the woman that this time he won't let the same thing happen to that kid. Back with our hero, who was asking about the two standing outside of the building and why they weren't coming with them. The girl told him those two weren't sent here to protect him, rather to take him out in case he tries to escape. So they were just standing outside. Yeah, he had no clue what to say to that, but at least she and Leo trusted him. Yeah, apparently the answer was a no. After a bit, they arrived outside the room. So to get it over with quickly, he brought out the key to open the thing and grab his stuff. But just as he was about to insert it into the keyhole, he noticed scratches on the lock and immediately realized something was up. Sure enough, there was a guy standing just on the other side of the door, just waiting for him to enter. Oh damn, not just one, but several gunmen were ready for an ambush. Yeah, like something like that was enough to fool Selena. The girl jumped in through the window while blasting the hell out of most of the men. Startled, the remaining fools turned to see what was going on, only to get slapped on the face and go flying through the air and crashing through into the next room by our hero. Still, there were several of the men remaining, so Kasai got ready to blow off some steam. While focusing on the kid, they completely forgot about the real threat in the room that was closing in on them, and then Crack, his friend, heard the sound of something cracking behind him. Furious, he turned to shoot the girl for doing that to his friend, only to get wrestled to the ground by Kasai, and the bullet from his weapon went flying past Selena's face, almost leaving a scar. And she was not happy about it, since she almost lost her head just now because that kid was just too slow. So Kasai apologized, and to make up for his mistake, he started bashing the fool's face with non-stop punches. And once he was convinced the fool can no longer move, he charged up for a final hit and bam, landed that fist right on the man's nose. With the fools taken care of, Selena began exterminating the survivors, and after the place was safe, she playfully turned to the kid asking if these guys were his friends. Well, not quite. These guys are nothing but henchmen sent to finish him off. Not like she cared or anything, so she suggested he grab whatever he came here looking for so they could leave. That's when her eyes landed on a poster on the wall, so she started teasing him about it, which annoyed our hero, so he asked the girl to stop looking at his stuff. As for the item he came here for, it was a necklace, which was given to him by his parents on his birthday. And now that the thing was back in his possession, he assured the two he was getting closer to finding the culprit who did that to their family. Selena, on the other hand, was getting annoyed seeing him just standing there in silence, so she asked if they can leave now. But then she saw something outside of the window and immediately stiffened up. Next panel, and a bullet was seen flying into the place through the window, but she managed to move the fool out of the way just in time. As it would have it, whoever is after this fool really wants him gone, because they even stationed snipers outside of the building, and since she was getting dragged into his mess, she suggested the fool do exactly as she is saying if he wants to survive. That's when they heard another gunshot ring out. And man, whoever this sniper is, he isn't messing around because that bullet was like it had a mind of its own, as it ricocheted through the room and went straight for the two, but thankfully they managed to move their heads out of the way just in time. Well, for a second, both of them froze, unsure of what to think about what they had just seen. But then her confusion turned into anger as she demanded the kid tell her exactly who was firing those shots, because this was the second time a bullet almost took her head off because of him. Well, Kasai had an idea about who it could be, since those guys have only one marksman that is capable of something like that. Cut to the outside, and a man was seen cursing at his luck since he missed again because of that woman. As for his identity, this one is Shark, Naraka's top contracted marksman, and apparently he and Kasai have a history, and it's not a good one, so it's pretty obvious neither of them liked each other very much. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know what happens next, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.